Good afternoon, Deanne here with Connecting the Dots. And I got my friend, Big King Sadiq. He's popping in and out right now. It's pretty funny. We're here at metaStone, and we're going to share a little bit of Willie Whitefeather. I've got more pages of his book scanned, if you've seen any of our other, my other Willie Whitefeather presentations. So without further ado, I'm going to try to get to the screen sharing and get to that. Okay, we have to do a little test here. And from the beginning. So the name of his book, if you've heard me talk about him, Willie Whitefeather, was a friend of my family. He used to come to some of our discussion groups where we were reading different books together and sharing things that we were learning. And he started sharing things that he was putting together. This is what he calls a coloring book for his grandchildren, but it's at a pretty high level. I don't know, maybe they were 35 when they were coloring in here. Had a little bit of experience under their belt.
Right.
So at any rate, he called it seeing cause and effect. So a lot of times when I've referred to the Willie Whitefeather wisdom, I haven't really used the title, but here it is, seeing cause and effect through the eye of the eagle for peace, which I know resonates with you, Big King, because you always love to talk about peace, love, respect. So he wrote this for his grandkids. I'm going to fast forward. I'm trying to get a few pages in here to some of the good stuff. So they think differently. The Native Americans think generationally. They don't just think like what's good for me right now and my family right now. They're thinking about what's good for their family generations, like 7 generations down the line. It's like when I plant a tree, that tree may not yield for a while, but down the road, it could feed my family for years, for decades. So that's a different kind of thinking. So here's one of the first things he says, OCO, grandkids, and he's going to tell you later on what OCO means. But, it's a little book he did. He said, because grown-ups won't understand. So OCO means hello in Cherokee. And he said that Tslaki, I guess, is how you really say it. But the Pilgrims couldn't say Tslagi, so they removed the la sound and added their r sound. So that's how they now just greet people with OCO, which also looks like the logo sign, when something's got the little copyright.
Okay.
So he's always relating things. That's what he's doing. Cause and effect, but then also how things in nature relate to things that we're seeing in what's our environment. That's sort of our nature right now. It's not as literal as a tree or a blade of grass, but it is our environment, just like when they lived indigenously, they were affected by that. So indeed. I'm not going to decode all these pages, but, I grew up in Phoenix, and he says that in Phoenix, it's about a phoenix bird is about protection.
Okay.
Because in many cultures, a phoenix bird is about recreating something out of the ashes, which I think we're getting ready to do as a society. Once we make it to the other side of what we're going through, there will be rebuilding. And some of us, I think, will be change agents. And I think we'll be sheepdogs. And I'll explain to you about those sheep herders a little bit later. So here's a couple things. In 1700, there was kings and queens who loved silver and gold, but not people, and not poor people. They called them peasants. So the Pilgrims left England and never even tried to right the wrongs of their government. So they left because they didn't like things that were going on over there. But they came here and they really didn't try to right that. They just were trying to sort of, I guess, escaping was their main goal. They accomplished that, but they didn't change their thinking. So I said the French people also had kings and queens and emperors, and also a big prison that they called the Bastille. So eventually there was a whole uprising. Then they burned the Bastille. They rescued people out of there was only like 7 people in there by the time they got done that they rescued, but it was a big turning point that kicked off like the French Revolution. And I do have another revolution and immigration and Trump video, which was sort of inspired from this on my channel. So if you go and look at that, and what's really interesting is that there was a certain planetary alignment, with Mars and Jupiter and Venus, like all coming into alignment. We're coming into that again. And what happened then? The French Revolution, the American Revolution, those were going on at pretty much the same time. This planetary alignment lasts several months, but we're coming into like the real straightest alignment of it. And look what we've got going on in the world. We've got revolutions and wars abundant. So you might want to go check out that video, because I fleshed that out a little bit. But I was really inspired to do that, like from Willie Whitefeather's work. And then I found that planetary alignment. I mean, that's what he's talking about, cause and effect. So was there something in that alignment that caused that effect? And is it causing it again right now? So the poor French people on July 14th, 1786, they knocked down that Bastille, and then they lived happily ever after because they revolted and kind of got what they want. Well, meanwhile, King James in England was writing his version of the Bible. A lot of people still today use King James Version. And he said, well, he might have had a little bit of his own touch on here. And Willie's a good cartoonist. He says, well, I'll put a little part of this here, and I don't like this part here. Let me see now. So there may have been a little editing going on, which we know happened. But it really shouldn't have happened, in my opinion. Hope I'm not being too judgmental with that. But, he rewrote the Bible at that time. So there's certain things that got changed for, like, Willie believes that kids need hopes and dreams. And here's an example. Oh, by the way, Francis Bacon, they believe really helped edit the King James. And he was also belonged to that organization. And the first edition of the King James Bible, they have now historically found was edited by Francis Bacon and prepared under certain kind of supervision, according to Manly P. Hall. Wow. So it's the same group, the same club. So anyhow, here's one of the examples of something that they changed. So he believes in hope, right? Children need hope. And in the Native American culture, unicorns represent hope. Okay. And they didn't come out with glitter and rainbow tails and stuff like My Little Pony. Okay. But obviously the natives believed there was really unicorns. Now, they didn't get propaganda and TV to teach them that. They must have seen a unicorn. They must have been a real thing. So they believe that a unicorn represented hope, just like different spirit animals represent different qualities and protections and such. Okay, so when King James rewrote the Bible, they changed unicorn, which really meant hope, to something else. Okay, so did I miss a page here? I hope I didn't miss a page. Here we go. So after the Pilgrims, okay, basically they changed it to mean, I know there's a page missing there. It's not a wild boar, musk ox. So every place in the Bible that you see musk ox
used to be unicorn.
Very likely was unicorn. And there's about 7 or 8 places in the Bible: Isaiah, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Job, Psalms. There's a number of places where they changed it, and it became like a symbol of power and different. It totally changed the meaning, and it was no longer hope. So he says, now after the Pilgrims came to America, they made treaties and broke treaties with the Native Americans, which is, we talk about Indian giver. It's not them that gave something and took away. It was us that promised things and didn't abide by. So again, when you're calling somebody something, there's more fingers pointing back at you, right? So did we give them bad press? Were they getting dissed? But they upheld their end of the treaty. It's we that broke broke treaties with them,
Mm.
and essentially made slaves out of black people. And in Europe in the 1800s, Europe couldn't compete with the United States because of the slave labor that we had created. They couldn't compete with that. Especially when it came to, like, he's talking about picking cotton. And he says it's like the land was stolen. Like the Native Americans don't believe that anyone owns the land, that this is like a birthright that we're given, and it's part of our prosperity. And just like a bird doesn't worry that it didn't pay rent on the branch that it landed on, right? It's just given that as part of its habitat. So yeah, America became the number one in the world because we started trying to own the land, which was never owned before, and we created slave labor that Europe couldn't compete with. So this is just some things I've sort of added here, but it says, when the blood in your veins returns to the sea and the earth in your bones returns to the ground, perhaps then you will remember that this land does not belong to you. It is you who belong to the land. And they see themselves that way. They see themselves more of keepers of the land, protectors of the land. Okay, so here we are now, the richest country, and yet we killed the unicorn and replaced it with a wild bull musk ox. I struggle to say musk ox. It does not flow well off my tongue. But anyhow, in all of the new versions of the Bible, now this is kind of an Arizona thing. He said, you got to know now that your grandpa don't buy bull. We had the Earnhardt family that, from NASCAR in Arizona. They bought this, they had car dealerships and truck sales in Arizona, and they bought this most huge bull. I mean, he was going to be turned into hamburger, and they bought him, from somebody. And they would have him in these commercials, and they would talk about the price of the truck, and we've got the best deal on this, and then such and such down, such and such financing. They're wheeling and dealing, telling you, and that ain't no bull. Of course, he's standing next to this enormous bull. So when he says, now your grandpa don't buy bull, it means a lot to. It makes total sense to me. Because of the backstory growing up in Arizona, because this is where we knew Willie at, right? And he says, but you kids do need hope, and you need unicorns. So now some people will tell you heaven's up there. But he said, look, ever since the Pilgrims landed, wars have been greater and millions of soldiers have died. And at every soldier's burial, they shoot at heaven. The 21 gun salute. That doesn't make sense to them. Why are you shooting at heaven? It's kind of an interesting thing. And he says, but yet the preacher's hands are clean. But meanwhile, they're shooting up in the air. It says, you just picture the bullets coming up towards heaven. Yeah. Now, suppose one of those bullets hit an angel and it hit the harp or something and came back down. Now, there's nothing worse than an angel who was cheated into thinking that heaven was a peaceful place. He says, now the Cherokee blood in your body mixed with some other types, the Cherokee and all the other tribes on this land had heaven right here on earth. Doesn't this just tie into so many things we've been discussing today here at metaStone? Right here on earth, long before the Pilgrims came, or even Columbus, this earth was the snow eagle.
Wow.
And the Americas were known as the Great Turtle Island. So he's giving you some examples of the patterns on, the little swirly things. He says the spirals on, and you find these spirals on rock writings, hieroglyphs is the technical term for them and such, and on a turtle's back. And the Cherokees also had, turtle shells they used as rattles. So I've got some neat little, come on, here we go. Look at this view of North America. It does look like a turtle from space.
Wow.
And see, this is how, and he, look at him. He says, how did the ancestors know that America looked like a turtle?
Right.
Yeah.
We're shown by the star people.
I believe so. I think you might be right about that. It's a satellite view in North America, and it really does resemble a turtle. It does.
Yeah.
This takes only just a little hint of imagination, and there it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And so this is a different way. This is probably more Photoshop, but yeah, we could be thinking of our whole Earth as a turtle too.
Yeah.
And now this is one of those petrified rock things that they find. Like, did these animals like freeze in place? And you can see those spiral patterns, but this is, they find snakes and what look like dragons, but I put this turtle in because it's just so profound to me. And here's an ancient one, petrified. Look at the eye. It almost has a gleam in it.
It looks like it's smiling.
It does look happy. Whatever petrified it must have happened quickly. It doesn't look like it suffered. And then here's another thing about the turtle's back. It has this very specific pattern that equals 28. So we have 13 moons and 28 days on all turtle shells. So this is actually a way to keep track of time. It comes out pretty close to 365 days. So there are those that say we were really meant to have 13 months and not 12. And that the women's cycles, would align more with this kind of 28-day pattern. That's always been known. Somewhere in there, they changed the timekeeping on us. And the turtle actually represents that older timekeeping. I think at some point very soon, we're going back to this. Okay. And even some astrologers say there's a 13th month. So this is what's been put out there. If you think about it, this is where Willie Whitefeather stuff and me resonate, because I'll take it another step further. So Deca, what does that mean? 10. Why is it on our 12th month? Octopus, 8. Why is it on our 10th month? So if you start looking at what some of these months were, Sept is 7. Why is it currently on our 9th month? Okay, so what this is doing, this 13th month lunar calendar, they start the first of the year on Easter. That becomes day 1. April becomes the first month of the year. And April is first in the zodiac, right?
It is.
Aries is first. Okay. And then May, June, they add another month called Soul. Well, what would that 13-month be called? It's called Soul.
Yes.
Don't you love this? And then there's July. Now August. Now September. What did we say it meant? 7. So what month is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What does Oct mean?
8.
What month is it now?
8.
The 8th month. December means 10. Now it's the 10th month.
November is in like 9,
Yeah. So we will be, if this happens, we'll be able to adjust to it. Because some of it'll take a little retraining, believe me. But women's cycles, now how many months is gestation? You just had a grandbaby.
42 weeks.
I thought it was 40 weeks. 40 to 42. Okay. So if you have a 13-month calendar, you have more like 4 weeks, right? So if you figure out 9 months and 40 weeks, they've been telling you a baby comes in 9 months. A baby's really been coming in 10 months.
I've heard
36 weeks is 9 months.
Yeah, but the baby goes to 40.
Yeah.
So we've
That's
actually,
10.
it's really 10.
Yeah. I know about this stuff. I've heard about this before.
You
The
have?
other stuff and the turtle. Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting. I'm just doing like Big King does. I'm just putting it together.
Across the United States that my mom was Cherokee.
Your mom?
Yeah.
Oh, well, he's Cherokee. I know Heather said you
Probably
wanted
your
to hear
uncle.
this.
Probably your uncle.
I know Heather told me you wanted to hear
Yeah,
this
his
stuff.
father's name was-
Connecting the dots.
We're connected. We can bing, 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 bing. Like ping pong in here. We got him going. So this is just something, just I don't know, different. And then my friend Kathy's going to do more on Turtle World, but he does talk about this cosmic turtle, and he saw the statue somewhere, and we've been trying to find it. We found this on Wikipedia. That's the closest, but I'm not going to give away her whole presentation, but there's a whole breakdown of these elephant. Do you know about this?
I know about the giant sky turtle thing you guys talk about.
Well, tell us about the sky
There was
turtle.
a spaceship. Star people came and taught Native Americans a lot of stuff. Like you asked earlier, how would they know this and what the United States, the sky people or the star people taught them. And the older Indians will tell you this too,
Mhm.
because they passed their knowledge down from generation to generation, but not so much to white man. They
Right.
kept stuff. They didn't tell them.
I think they're starting to disclose too. I
They
think
are.
they feel it,
they are because they
closer.
know it's needed.
and I think they will help lead us out.
Yeah.
So I really do. There's a strong feeling about that.
Mhm.
But my friend Kathy, in November, we're doing this, so I'm not going to go into that too much. But they do believe that the Great Turtle Island is shaking people awake.
There we go.
Okay, with earthquakes and volcanoes. And have we not had a tremendous amount of that? And it's like, he calls it a circle of fire, because it's like all around the earth. Well, we're seeing that. We're seeing how many fires recently, how many earthquakes. It's been unbelievable. So he says when the soldiers shoot their guns, they say fire, which means we're aiming at a bullseye. So the more you see this fire, see how he's painting it? The more you see the fire, the closer we are to the bullseye.
Mhm.
And we've seen an escalation in fires. And then I have to put a little comical thing in here. This little person, you got to come see this one. It's visual, Sadiq. We got some food here we're sharing. Got a little informal potluck going on.
I think when we're
Do you have any special skills? Me.
Wow.
She can make a shadow look like a turtle.
Mhm.
Sure enough.
I know. I got to put some humor in every now and then, break up all my seriousness.
when I
I've
see
been told I'm too serious when I'm
That's a
presenting.
nice one.
when I seen with the worker with a hard hat on, the boss asked him if he had any special skills, and he did the same thing. Didn't make the
And he made the turtle too?
Yeah.
So some people know how to
It's
do
like-
it.
Yeah.
I just wonder how she made the
Mhm.
tail.
Probably something hanging down.
Yeah.
See how her dress is like got tie.
Oh yeah, maybe she had a tie in the back. It's a perfect turtle.
Mhm.
Okay, so anyhow, so much of this, when I would read this, I was like, it's so relevant today.
Mhm.
Sadiq, haven't we had conversations about this? I think children are like expendable.
Mhm.
And so the world leaders are teaching the grown-ups to fear the enemy more than love their kids.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
fear and love motivating in this planet. We were just talking about that too. And it's amazing when I come back to Willie's work. It's almost like when I come back to the Bible and I read something that's just so relevant for today.
Mhm.
This book has a lot of that effect on me.
Mhm.
And
That's so powerful.
It does. And so I may not literally be Willie's grandchild, but he'd be happy we were sharing.
Mhm.
So anyhow, that's really what it comes down to. The world leaders, he calls them, teaching grown-ups. And then we talked about this. We can't do better till we know better. And if everything we've been taught is upside down and not quite right, then that's all we know. And that's what we're going to teach our kids.
He's
Is it-
clearly referring to the elites as well.
I do think he's referring to the elites.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So-
Cherokee also say that the white man worships visible spirit in the sky because they fear hell. When the Indians say that Native Americans go into the woods and worship Mother Earth,
Mhm.
it's a fear thing, fear
Mhm.
factor. I mean, I'm not saying
Well, see, if you've
Science
got
nothing,
that
but-
Cherokee and you would understand that.
Yeah.
There. But I think that we should be thinking this way. All of us, the whole planet,
Mhm.
should be starting to analyze these things.
we
How did
should've-
we get here? What were we taught?
should have, there's a lot of stuff that was forgotten too. That we already knew. I mean, who knows how long ago very long time ago.
How much has been
And it's
sequestered?
been, you're right, and it's been, like you were saying, eventually
Scoot in the
brainwashing
frame,
people
Bill. Scoot over a little bit.
to be
Man, brother.
controlled. I don't know.
All right.
All right, Bill's anonymous on the side
Yeah,
here.
fine.
Well, he brings up some great points because if we stop and think about it, it's sort of a big and universal scheme, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's been done before.
Yeah, well, they say when it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if
Mhm.
they've had success indoctrinating and controlling the masses, they're going to repetitively revisit the same themes, right? The
Yeah.
same different ways, the same ways of dividing us, the divide and conquer. It's funny to me, I guess, real quick, what I pull out of it is that some of these small sayings, right, ring true to us and prove to be the most powerful even now today. Like, for example, I've always said, or at least I now say, that the most powerful phrase ever is just a 3-word phrase: know thyself.
Mm.
Right.
That's a challenge.
Mm.
Indeed, and it's wisdom from the indigenous, right? And these are the folks who are pointing the way, reminding us of us what has happened, where we're coming from, and ideally where we're heading, right? So yeah, I resonate with all this.
So
Yeah.
when we talk sometimes about putting the armor of God on, he's telling you to put the armor of armor. It almost looks like Armageddon. Armor, armor, and get them.
Mm.
Armor.
I got you. Right.
Armageddon, armor, and get them. He's playing with words there.
Yes.
And that's what he'll break things down. And then he's reminding us that fear is nothing more but false evidence appearing real.
Mm.
Or it could also mean free every anxious reaction. Now, I haven't heard that one so much. So we'll go on here. The fears of the grown-ups are then dumped onto the kids. So when you're in your young life, you hear, be careful, look out, use caution. Then when you're 17, they draft you. They're talking about a draft again.
Mhm.
I get every time I come back to this, there's something else relevant in the world.
Mhm.
I've heard them talking about expanding the draft to women.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to probably say, well, Israel does it. So
Every time you come back to this, there will be something.
Mhm.
I'm serious.
it,
Every time there will be something that's relevant in there. These Native Americans weren't dumb.
yeah. Yeah.
They didn't even steal off of each other. They had no reason to. They had no reason to lie. They was for each and every one,
I've heard that. There's so much
Yeah.
prosperity for us, but like you said, how we talked about the salad, it's got green onions in it. It's so stinking easy to grow green onions. It takes like almost zero effort,
Mhm.
but somebody's controlling that. You got to go to the grocery store and buy them. Okay, so anyhow, when you're 17, you're drafted and they give you a gun to kill the enemy across the border. But don't kill, he says.
Mm.
It will come back on you. Because remember what's this book called? Cause and Effect.
Mhm.
When President Reagan said on TV, I don't know the date, but there was a half moon night, the Soviets shot down a plane, 007, with a missile. Okay, so he's showing a little cartoon of that. And innocent people on the airliner were killed over the Sea of Japan. So that's something you could look up, Soviet MiG crashing. It says then did you notice the D he put here? And then, and he said it was on didn't say the date. He's going to get into what the D it means.
Okay.
Then on the following full moon, the Soviet Navy missile base blew up. Cause and effect. Okay. So they believe in a full moon, half moon, full moon, half moon kind of cycle. So that they even have a timing to it. So you have your event, and then 14 days later on the half moon, you have your cause and then your effect. So that's what he's starting to bring out here. So the full moon, the Navy missile blows up, the missile blows up a base and a missile went off. And then it tells you on the Koala Peninsula, and they thought it was an accident, but not to him, not the way he's looking at it. It was cause and effect,
Indeed.
which the O is, one's full moon, one's half moon. He said, well, grandkids, there are no accidents. All things come back full circle. So there's our circle. To quote Chief Seattle, all things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. So now let's look at the moon. So we've looked a little bit at the earth and the turtle. So all the nations and the world can see the moon. They've given it many names. There's a rabbit in the moon. So there's certain ways you can look at it and really see the rabbit. But he's given some of the names of it: Moon, Tarawa, Ute, Suki, I can't pronounce them all, Muya, which is Hopi, Nida, Luna, Lua, all the names of the moon. He says, but there's only one moon. And also there's only one God. Just lots of names. We have lots of names for God too. So look at this picture. It does look like a rabbit. So we have the turtle really looking like the turtle. And now we have the rabbit really looking like a rabbit. And we're surprised.
It's like the tortoise and the hare.
It is the tortoise and the hare. It's a whole new twist on the tortoise and the hare. Yes. The moon, or moon hare, is a mythical figure in Asian and indigenous American folklore. Yeah, it's just amazing. And this is just Wikipedia here,
The tortoise and the hare.
It's
A whole new light.
yeah. So this is me where I scan his pages in and then I kind of decode them a little bit too. Okay, so the half moon is what the D represents, and the full moon is the O. But remember when we had VE Day? Victory? Like after World War II? They called it Victory in Europe? VE Day? I can remember my grandparents talking about this. We're probably all a little bit young, but I can remember them.
Not to mention
They would know dates on a calendar. Oh, it's VE Day, like what's that? That's when we won the World War, So I said that they called it VE Day and because of victory in Europe. But he said, or it could also refer to the Victorian era. Now, what was common in the Victoria era? The mud flood stuff and all this is kind of going back to the Victorian era. Silver and gold. We are back to a silver and gold thing going on right now, too. So the half moon is cause, shaped like a D, and the full moon is effect. Put that together with victory, and what does it spell? D-O-V-E.
For peace.
Dove. It spells dove, and in Spanish, he tells us what it is there. Dios. Dove means peace.
Yeah.
Right. So the spiritual, if dove was your spirit animal, a dove brings a message of peace and hope to a hurting heart. Whose heart's hurting right now? People all over the planet. Okay, people learning the truth, and it hurts to learn the truth right now. It hurts to find out what's been done to us. But the dove can also be seen as a totem animal who brings gentle compassion and healing. You can call on the dove. If you feel that way, you can call on the dove when you need to release what's been holding you back. When you're feeling that like grief, or how are we going to come back? We're coming into a time where we may see things that we think it's all forsaken, it's doomed. That's the time you need to hold on to a dove.
It's like the Noah's Ark too.
Very pivotal in Noah's Ark. The dove was very pivotal.
They came back, so they knew it wasn't.
I'm working on a whole presentation about doves that's coming up. I've got many slides on that. You'll see a future presentation on that. But again, I get inspired by Willie. And then around the same time that I found Willie's book, I found my mom's copy of the Keys of Enoch. There's a good story there. I had asked her when she was moving and packing her things, something had come up, during the pandemic, and somebody had mentioned the Keys of Enoch, and I'm like, Mom, you had that book. Before you pack it, can you put it aside? Because I'd really like to read through it again.
Please pardon my ignorance. What's the Keys of Enoch?
The Keys of Enoch
Oh, the Keys of Enoch.
might have been my pronunciation because my head's turned.
No, I just didn't.
The
catch it.
Keys of Enoch. There's the Book of Enoch. It's basically
got
a
you now.
Bible thing. It was left out of the Bible,
No,
right?
I know. I just didn't know you were saying Enoch.
Gotcha.
Pardon me.
That's okay, Enoch. So she couldn't find it. And then she moved in with me, and there was things going on we were waiting for. Well, one day I was starting after she passed, I was needing to get some of her stuff out, and I was actually looking for stuff for her husband's children, Gary's children. And there was a certain area where there was kitchen stuff, and there was a mixer I wanted to give them because it had been their dad's, and I already have a mixer, so I wanted to give it back to them. It was their dad's. So there's certain boxes that I went through, and then I came back the next day with his daughter to give her the mixer, and there's the Keys of Enoch book laying there.
Mm.
I was just there the day before I went through. Oh, there was no books. It was all kitchen stuff, and there was the Keys of Enoch laying there. But what's very interesting in there is that this map came from the Keys of Enoch book, and it's called The Return of the Dove.
Mm. Wow.
This is North America.
Wow.
This is the United States. There's part of this here is where we live.
Wow. Oh, excuse me, pardon.
So,
Looks like a turtle facing down too.
well, I see it as the beak, like the bird flying.
Yeah.
Yeah, my hand's blocking the screen. Sorry about that. I just realized I'm totally blocking the camera.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
So there's a dove, its wings are back, and
Mhm.
Return of the Dove.
wow.
Also looks like an alien skull.
It does.
Mm.
And what did I tell you guys about my vision? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I'd be getting some visitors at some point.
Maybe.
Okay, so we're gonna shift subjects just a little bit. So Wawa. Now we gotta calm down from all my dove stuff. It gets me all pumped up. So Wawa, or what do kids call it? That's like what a little kid would say. Wawa. Was a pure water was the last purification of our earth, right? The great floods,
Yep.
right? So we have the responsibility not to kill people, because all things come full circle, according to Willie. The rabbit and the turtle are in a race. So the earth, going around the turtle, the tortoise and the hare that we mentioned. Maybe that tortoise and hare story didn't come down the way it was meant to. Maybe it got changed. That would be interesting to research the tortoise and the hare
That's
story.
very interesting.
That's a
Let's
good
see if-
point.
How would you know?
Unless you dig and find
Yes,
really
exactly.
ancient,
I
more
talked to
Mhm.
some
books that are
elders.
100 or 200 years
Maybe
old.
that's a conversation we should look to have with some indigenous.
Let's
folks.
challenge somebody to
Doctors.
research the tortoise and the hare. Maybe someone will.
Some of the elders might be willing to talk about some of the stories passed down from their
Mhm.
grandparents.
I would
Because
love
that
to have
sounds like something that
conversation.
could have come from Native American. So now he's saying Wa in their is G. And then we have full moon, half moon,
God.
water, full moon, half moon spells God.
Mm.
Mhm.
He's always pulling things out. You gotta kind of look at all this little stuff to find it.
Mhm.
So that's interesting too. Okay, then he's telling us we got to take care of our Mother Earth. If all the trees are gone, then the earth will look like the moon,
Mm.
and the rabbit will win. This is why I'm wondering if the tortoise and the hare story
Mhm.
That
might have.
sounds completely related now. Like there's no way around it.
It's just presenting itself to us right now.
It's like common knowledge to me. That's what I've been taught
Huh.
from my mom. That's
Hmm.
I figured you got that by now.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'm not being ignorant or nothing. but
Yeah.
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 They don't have make believe stories.
I don't believe so, and they wouldn't pass them down generation after generation
Some of
just
them
for a
are-
campfire story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Everything had serious meaning.
Yeah.
You know.
they were worth
Applicable.
passing down. So he's saying, like, if we don't take care of the earth, and it's kind of funny because everybody's like, oh, carbon footprint, blah, 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 carbon dioxide, electric cars, blah, 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 blah. Guess what? You know what feeds trees? Carbon dioxide. You know what feeds us? Oxygen in the air that they put back out. And the plants need it to grow crops to feed us. We're not overpopulated believe me, I've driven across this country. There are miles and miles and miles of nothingness.
Right.
We can put more crops. We can feed this.
Yeah.
You
and
can
that's
put-
just
But
our
see,
You could put almost the whole population on the state of Texas and we could survive.
that's where I would say we have to recognize the agenda machine at work, because if you are able to sell the idea of depopulation, what better tool to have to sell your agenda of actually
Shortage and lack. and-
right. So
Mhm.
you put forth the image. Okay, listen, we're overcrowded. We don't have a much, enough food to eat. We don't have places to house
then
people.
Jeanette-
There's famine. So if we just get rid of many of the people, we'll solve all of these problems.
And
this is
what are we made
fuels
of?
the
What is
thinking
one of the
the
main ingredients we're made of?
Carbon.
Carbon. Isn't it interesting they chose to call it carbon footprint?
Mhm.
Are we not the carbon they want to get rid of? Do we not have a footprint? Are they not telling us in plain sight?
Plenty ways that they do. Plenty ways that they do.
Because I'm telling you, as a
perhaps
Native
that-
American viewpoint,
Yeah.
carbon footprint sounds like something they're talking about us. So if you don't take care of it, it could look like the earth, but we have everything we need to take care of the earth, and it will take care of us. We have it all.
It's so simple. Man,
But-
that's what it makes.
But this is meant to help shift people's thinking with
Mhm.
stories and cartoons. And I'm very, very privileged.
Mhm.
Bless you, Willie. I'm getting chills.
Mhm.
I hope he's here, and I hope he knows, like, I'm so privileged to
Mhm.
share it with you guys. Because when I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, and I call Heather and I call Kathy, and this is part of this is main reason I put up a channel, so we could share this stuff.
Well,
So-
I know being of indigenous descent myself, that there's nothing more nothing that pleases our ancestors more than the remembrance factor, right? The
Mhm.
more we are able to keep that bridge.
Here's another theme for
open,
today.
right? Keep that bridge open between our past generations and future generations with the remembrance of the present generation. Certainly, our ancestors are pleased with that, and that's what that makes me.
So I'm so happy. It's so happy to share it with you, because my insights to it change as I'm impacted by events in our news. But here's the biggest thing: we did not inherit this land from our fathers. We are borrowing it from our grandchildren.
Mhm.
And there's that generational thinking. When you talk about we plant a tree, maybe you don't even see it bear very much fruit, but it could bear for years to come.
Man said one time too, planting a tree knowing it will not benefit you at all is an act of love,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but generations ahead it will.
Mhm.
Yes. And
That's right.
if we shifted and we thought like that, we would have abundance beyond our wildest dreams.
Sure. All of that thinking are emblematic of unity consciousness, right? As opposed to separation mentality. So,
Absolutely. We bring it back to that too. So babies, we talk about the veil, like all of us here have had a near-death experience. All of us got information at that point, but it's a struggle to bring it all the way through. We get glimpses, bits and pieces, yet it's still inside us, right? It's just hard consciously. Well, he believes that babies are born with knowledge of past lives.
Mhm.
And they say things in 2 times. It's a pattern that he's noticed, or maybe Cherokee's noticed, but he's pointing it out. So they say things like tata, moo, mama, dada. Well, what did we just say? Mama was wawa, right? Water. So these things have meaning. They're actually like Lemurian words.
Mhm.
So we think the baby's just saying little syllables, but they're actually saying like Lemurian words and
Mhm.
things when they come through. So-
And from what I understand, babies, at least in a lot of my esoteric circles of study, that babies are multidimensional in nature for at least the first 6 to possibly 9 months.
yes, and
Or
you know,
even
the
more.
first thing we do in our culture when a baby's born is slap it and make it cry.
Mhm.
What does that represent?
Yeah.
Trauma.
Here,
And
yeah.
then right after
It
that,
came right out of a warm womb that was dark and now it's in the light and something slaps it and tries to make it cry.
Mhm.
What if we let babies be born without that trauma?
Right.
This is what I mean. We're so
Mhm.
close to having a perfect world. We just have to shift
Mhm.
our thinking.
I'm sure it's
This
okay
much
if you
even.
don't take a breath in the first 2 seconds, you know?
But
Yeah.
even a little, we talked about the butterfly effect. Okay. Little changes ripple out. What if a baby was born and we didn't slap it
Mhm,
on the behind and make it cry
mhm,
and have it experience its first trauma
mhm.
right after the trauma of birth? Now it's probably
Birth
like
is
2
trauma.
traumas.
Yeah, birth is trauma
So
enough.
is that how we're going to groom them? Just trauma after trauma
Mhm.
after trauma to make them compliant.
To
Mhm.
introduce them to the world that they'll become and expected to be integrated into a world of trauma, a world of constant indoctrination and an utterly saturated fear society.
How many times have we heard, suck it up, it's just life?
Mm.
Does that really help you cope? I don't know.
Too.
It's life.
Right,
Life
Well,
ain't easy.
right.
But you ladies that are out there childbearing years, you know,
That reminds me of something. When I was born, my mom said that she had to, and I'm more like my mom than any of the kids are born. But the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. I was purple and I was a breech baby.
couple
So
challenges.
They had a lot of, she had the worst time, she said, with me. So I was really traumatized.
Mm.
So you were probably triple, quadruple. Yeah, explains a lot about you, Bill.
Keep on soldiering through.
I have an excuse.
And yet you're here now.
And I was purple when I was born.
You probably were. So Moo Moo again means the land of Moo. That's
Mm.
like related to Lemuria too. What it's now covered by water or Wawa.
Mhm.
And a dress that covers a woman's body is called a nana
Mhm.
Mm.
Or moo moo.
or a
In
muumuu,
Hawaii,
that
they
too.
Yeah.
And nana can also mean grandmother in a lot of cultures. And then he's got some other stuff. He talks about this. I'm not going to decode the why right now, but he's got a whole, if any of you that know like numerology and gematria, he's got a whole Cherokee gematria thing. And
Okay.
I'm just not ready to decode the whole thing. So I'm going to skip that part.
Uh-huh.
So Nana again also is like grandmother. But he said Mount St. Helens is next to the 45th parallel on the earth.
Mm.
Okay. And Gigi, okay, it's also on the 45th Wawa. So that's also on the 45th parallel. Says after 7 years, a baby only says things one time. They stop saying the double syllables. And I think it has to do with the veil. I think when they're saying these things and they're being multidimensional, then the veil starts to close and they start to not remember anymore. And when I was in Arizona teaching, the area, I should say New Mexico, when I was in New Mexico teaching, the area I was in was very heavy Navajo population. And I got to be very good friends with my Navajo neighbors. We helped each other out through some different situations, which is another story for another time. But they had a child, and I didn't realize they don't celebrate babies' birthdays until the 3rd birthday.
Mm.
And then it is a big deal. I can't even convey to you because the whole tribe comes to celebrate the baby's birthday.
Mm.
And I mean like 300 people show up. Like,
Okay.
because they believe that the baby spirit kind of goes between different worlds and it hasn't really decided which world it's going to be in.
Mm.
So what we would look at is maybe sudden infant death,
Mhm.
crib death, they call it sometimes. They would be okay with that.
Right.
They would miss the baby, but in a different way. But the baby hadn't decided to be here yet.
Mhm.
I've heard the exact same thing about the
Hmm.
Navajo.
Yeah, they view it differently.
Mhm.
And so, but once it hits that 3-year mark, that means that baby has decided to stay with these people. So then they accept that baby into the tribe. So, I mean, my neighbors, they were preparing for 10 days. You know, have you ever seen somebody make a barbecue out of like a 55-gallon tank drum
Yeah.
and they weld it and make a barbecue? I'm telling you, a whole row of those was lined up in their backyard. They had, and sheep is really big. So there was like, they were cooking mutton and the women were in there making mutton stew and fry bread. And I mean, there was people there cooking, and you know what I'm talking about now, right?
I showed her what fried bread was. I've been wanting it for so long. My mom used to make it all the time. So I made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, next time we do Willie Whitefeather,
good
you're bringing us white bread.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
did good on the
Like what bread?
fuzz. You probably do good on that too.
you bring us some bread next time,
Fried bread,
some
too.
fry bread. What? We'll have some fry bread.
Fried bread, man.
Yeah. Anyhow, I went in there. This is a little bit side story. I did the normal thing. I like went to Target, got a little baby outfit, a little toy or something, and put it in a cute little gift bag. I really didn't get the whole thing of this at this point. It wasn't really explained to me till later. And they have a word for white people, which is like Belagana. Basically means like nasty white person, And I walked in there and they do different things with eye contact. Like if they don't know you and what have you, they don't make eye contact with you like I would look at you.
Mm.
They look down. So I walk this party. I end up being the only white person with 300 people celebrating. Okay. Okay. So I walk in and there's chatter and stuff until I get in the door. Then all the eyes go down. They're looking at you out of their peripheral vision. They see you. They see a lot more about you than you realize. And then one of them, and no one would say anything to me. So I just sat down with my little gift bag. And one of them just very quietly got up and went in the kitchen and to the hostess, which was my neighbor, and said, da 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 da, Belagana. So I know that's me. I can see, look, but I wasn't taking it personal. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm white, the white person. And then all of a sudden say, da 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 da, the dog woman. So they called me the dog woman, and there's another story how I got to be called the dog woman, but I had healed some dogs,
Okay.
different things, and they knew, and they brought a dog to me that was sick, and me and the vet were on the same wavelength. I called it out the same stuff that the vet did. So they called me the dog woman because I knew what was I was healing the dog. So I hear the dog woman. Oh, the dog woman. Suddenly when they walk back in the room, they can all see me again. They could see me. They talked to me in English. Oh, you're the dog woman. So, but you have to just know that culturally, I didn't take any of it personally. And I wasn't any different when I walked in and they couldn't see me than I was when they discovered I was the dog woman. But apparently only the dog woman was invited.
Acceptable.
Wow.
So I take it as a great honor. I do. And then they explained to me the third birthday thing. And I've just held on to that. I've been so blown away.
That's where
So So when you talk about the veil and different things, like they believe that's it. So after 7 years, back to Willie, then they believe there's 7 openings in our head that we have to like understand. So I'm not quite following him this, but Mount St. Helens was like a signal. So I guess so we have 7 openings. After 7 years, we only say one thing. So somehow he's relating that. So I wish he was here. I don't know if I follow all of that. So I'm still trying to decode certain portions of this. I'm better at than others.
Well, now that you mentioned the openings in the head, okay, that's interesting. Mount St.
So
Helens would be an
opening in the earth.
Mhm.
So I guess, and Mount St. Helens was our smoke signal. So he's giving the symbol for Ma. So it's like when our mother says bye-bye. Okay, so whatever I'm trying to.
People.
that don't
You go.
bye-bye to the greedy people. So that's like our mother. I guess Mount St. Helens would be like our mother. Is that what he's saying? Saying bye-bye.
If nothing else, to me, I would say it's the earth symbolizing
It
the
has the
changing
smoke
of the
signal
paradigm.
coming up because they sent smoke signals. Native
Mhm.
Americans did.
True indeed. And with the bye-bye to the greedy people, the earth essentially saying and bidding adieu to the old paradigm and those that foster it. The greedy people.
So that's gonna,
Don't
it
want
sounds
that
like it's gonna
generation.
clear the way for 14 generations to come. Because before we were talking about 7 generations, now we're talking about 14 generations. So sometimes he's jumping around. I wish he was here because I'm like, I don't follow everything. I guess intuitively over time I get more of it.
Mm.
Yeah. And he might have put it this way for that reason. You'll get it when you're
The time
supposed
is
to
right.
get it.
Very
Native Americans are like that.
give you a breadcrumb.
They can be sly,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
that's cool.
wisdom though. I mean, they're very wise. You'll get it. Trust me, you'll get it when you're
So
supposed
okay,
to.
so I can't claim credit for any of this, but I just tell you over time I do get it.
Yeah.
And I get more and more each time I revisit this. So then he's talking about Christian people, and he wants them to answer this question: were there not 14 stations of the cross? That's more of a Catholic thing.
I've heard that before.
There was 14 stations of the cross. So
Yeah.
that'd be another thing to maybe decode. Okay, so the little kid David wasn't afraid to throw a rock at Goliath. So that little kid David becomes King David later. And for 14 generations after that, the kids were held in captivity.
Wow.
So he says, held in captivity of fear. So Mount St. Helens, when it screamed and threw rocks, it's like your grandpa sees, if we don't try and make the world for you kids, then Nana will do it for us. So it's a little piece of what he's saying, but sometimes I don't have the whole picture yet.
Interesting.
And then this one's interesting because I grew up in Arizona. I was born in Arizona. So Arizona it's a very beautiful state, lots of different scenery. You got the red rocks, you got saguaro cactus and different lakes and different things. Its birthday is February 14th. They're really into the 14s too. But this I did not know. It says it has a high suicide rate that's twice the national average of kids killing themselves. So, I mean,
Probably.
and then I looked at it in 2020, suicide was still the 10th leading cause of death in Arizona among kids. Okay. And it's still 35% higher. Now, Willie wrote this book. Somewhere in here, we found a date and it's like 1992. So in 1992, February 1st, 1992, he put this out. And here we are in 2020, still leading the nation in suicides. That needs to be looked into. So he's talking about the song, Darling, Stand by Me, when the land is dark and the moon is the only light that you can see. Oh, well, don't be afraid as long as you stand by me. So we've got to start banishing fear. Maybe fear's contributing to suicide. What do you think he's decoding here?
Where is the zone de silencio? The zone of silence. Have you ever heard of that?
Vaguely.
It's a place out west, and it puts off a frequency. Missiles go off course. There's no radio. Does not work there. Animals die there. I don't remember what state it is in. It seemed like it's either in Utah or Arizona.
I feel like Nevada. I don't know why I'm thinking Nevada. Zone of silence. YouTubers, somebody write that down. We gotta dig into that one.
I think I've heard of that. I believe it's like considered to be almost like a
vortex of some sort.
Something like the Bermuda Triangle, but
On land.
mainland. Yeah.
So he says here, the fear of facing life is taken away when you're quiet and still. or you watch the moon cycles. So I think he's saying that's the antidote to it, is that fear's got to be taken away. And how you do it is you quiet and still yourself and you watch the moon and you learn these cycles and things. And he said, a new sensation of awareness will dawn. What does dawn represent? The light coming back.
Mhm.
So I think he's offering a solution here. He's talking in the song about, the dark and the moon is the only light that you can see. Well, I won't be afraid as long as you stand by me. So then you're going to work on taking the fear away by being quiet and still. That's the last thing our world teaches us.
Yeah.
Our world is about rush, 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 and hurry, 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 and we need it yesterday.
Yeah.
We
And,
want-
and stay indoors and order it.
I know. I mean, what do we talk about? The
Take a
instant.
digital picture of the moon.
I mean, people can't even, like, we're going through a drive-through. People can't even pay attention long enough to listen to when I say
Yeah.
3 creams and 1 sugar, and he goes, "Okay, 2 creams and 1 sugar."
Mhm,
I just said 3 creams.
mhm,
I'm like, no, that's actually 3 creams.
mhm.
They can't even still themselves long enough to listen.
Pay attention.
We've got to fix that stuff. Okay.
The zone of silence is actually in
Mexico.
Mexico.
In Mexico, the country. I'll have to look into that. So I think this is interesting awareness of dawn. I mean, Pittsburgh has some dark things about it sometimes too. So maybe they need to be taught to be still and listen. It says it will knock out the darkness in your mind like the sun knocks out darkness at dawn, and it doesn't make a sound, which goes back to, what did you call that area?
Zone of silence.
The zone of silence.
No communication at all there.
So I don't like the part it was killing animals. I don't think that's our solution, but it's interesting
No,
that we're
it's-
talking about sound and silence.
Mhm.
This is interesting. So
It said that the birds though learned over time and they avoid that area completely.
I bet they do. So it says, don't take your life. Hang in there and fly like eagles. Because look at the cause and effect. And one day soon, grownups will see. So the kids are probably going to see it before the grownups see it. And well, it's like this. So he's going to tell another story. So in 1945, the scientists came to President Harry Truman and they said, "We have an atomic bomb." And Harry Truman said 2 words, "Drop it."
Mm.
And the Japanese were given 1 week's warning to get out of Hiroshima, or the US would blow up their town. The Japanese replied, "No way, we won't leave." And at the Potsdam Conference, now the bomb was important, but how to get it up in the air was more important. So the B-29 bomber, named the Enola Gay, was picked to fly the bomb. So the job of removing all the excess metal from the Enola Gay was completed on May 18th. And he says, see the ship logbook, so that the bomber could make a fast getaway from the atomic blast. So they're going to drop it and hightail it out of there. The bomb was loaded and it was set to explode in the air over Hiroshima. And 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was ordered to be dropped over Nagasaki, also from President Harry Truman in Washington. So the same, he's showing them in the cartoon 3 days apart, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Story 2, atomic shock waves go out in circles, like when you drop a little pebble in a pool of still water. All things come back full circle. There's that full moon, full circle, moon around the earth. So the next 45-degree parallel, right? Because we got bombs getting dropped, is in Washington State. We're back to Mount St. Helens.
Mhm.
So the scientists and the newsmen came to Harry Truman, who lived by Spirit Lake, by the way, and they said to him, the volcano has been giving, and there's a picture of it, by the way, before and after. Now, this is a postcard that my mom I found in my mom's photos.
Wow. Wasn't that lake also by the Native Americans called Devil's Lake?
I'm not sure.
Because it was supposed to be haunted or it was.
Can you look that up too, Heather? With your phone?
Might be
native-
why it was called Spirit Lake.
The Native Americans, when they didn't understand something, they said they would call it Devil This or Devil's Tower. It was because they didn't understand it, so they called it devil this, devil
There's
that.
a place on the edge of Weirton called Devil's
Yeah,
Den.
Devil's Den.
It was like they didn't mean it as something evil or bad.
It was kind of a beware thing, I would think.
Yes, caution.
But that might be because there's definitely a lake here. So here's I tried to show you the 45th parallel, you know, going straight across.
There's
And then the ley lines, like this is the 33rd parallel. And here's some other things that have happened on the 4th. So you have on the 45th parallel, you have Mount St. Helens and Hiroshima. And there is a gap there, but he believes it's cause and effect. But the 33rd parallel here in the United States has been loaded with stuff.
Yeah.
The Kennedy assassination, the Georgia Guidestones, the Tower of Babel is also on the 33rd parallel. The Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash, the Phoenix Lights, the Battle of LA, Mount Herman. And that's where the angels fell to earth. All that's on the 33rd
And
parallel.
if you follow that line, it goes clear over to like Easter Island and other sacred places that were there.
I've seen that.
It goes straight through.
I've seen that
perfect
line
line.
drawn. I've seen that line.
Well, he really believes this is cause and effect, that these things.
Yeah.
So you have something happen, so then something else happens, and something happens, and then something else happens.
So
It's cause and effect and cause and effect.
the things that
That's Willie, by the way. It's another picture of Willie.
So I just thought it was interesting in the way the Battle of Los Angeles and even what happened with UFOs over the White House, how stories and events that are so powerful somehow being
Historically.
so effectively buried. Nobody ever talks about that.
Well, and it's really interesting that they're in such alignment.
Mhm.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, but you would think that a story as vivid as a battle between United States military and UFOs, where the military actually shot down a UFO over Los Angeles, California, would be something that people would have as a fresh and vivid memory in their minds. Like,
Right.
at what point does that
Yeah,
become
when
a
did they
stale
go
memory?
away?
Right?
Well, UFO people know
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
we know.
Yeah, I know, but like,
You think every day
commonly,
people, I know
right.
it's not commonly, you gotta
And
You
the
gotta
same
dig for
thing,
it.
the same thing I would think about the UFOs over the White House. Like that was, how is that such a major event that like somehow gets lost in history? Like nobody really talks about that as it to me, it's just shocking.
I think maybe the ones who had the information died.
Hmm.
And then
Or maybe Men in
everybody
Black
else-
went winky winky and
Yeah.
blinked it away.
Or blink them away altogether. Like
They
it's,
could have been
like
blinked
it's
away.
said that the
That's-
men in black tend to threaten. Yeah, people do end up missing,
Yeah.
as in no longer living, unfortunately, when they hold certain information. But that's all changing, right? New
Yeah.
paradigm.
Yeah. Okay, so they had a warning for 1 week, right? With Mount St. Helens. They had a warning for 1 week. Remember the scientists come to Harry Truman? And then they had 1,000 quakes a day. Everyone else who lived on the mountain had left with light loads in a fast getaway case, which he's sort of like saying was like the Enola Gay, right? Like they had a fast light, they lightened their loads to get away quick.
Right.
He says Harry Truman, who cussed and played the piano, looked at the scientist and said, "No way, I won't leave." And on May 18th, 1980, Mount St. Helens exploded. And then 3 days later, and what was 3 days later? Those two,
Mhm.
Nagasaki and
Okay,
what have you.
gotcha.
3 days later, she exploded again, and both were high air blasts. So see, this is a direct cause and effect in his mind.
Right. Sure. It was the earth essentially saying, don't do this.
Yeah, if you don't get this right, I'm going to fix it.
Right.
I'm going to fix your little whatchy. So he says, now kids, that's called coincidence.
Mhm.
And I love this. Heather and I loved this when we first read it. Meaning two.
Exactly.
Two incidences.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And he just does it by putting that hyphen in there. We had a whole thing, and Heather had been thinking about coincidences.
I had written
Around-
about it. It's in one of my, writings that I did.
One of her downloads was about coincidence. So this was like a confirmation for her. The first time I was reading her this.
Mhm.
So that's called a coincidence. And so the mental European thinking, that's what he calls it. The same thinking that killed the unicorn, by the way, says, oh, that's just a coincidence. Or instead of thinking, my, what a coincidence. These two incidences are related. He said, but that's it. So mental European thinking goes into 3 stories like this: 1, 2, 3, and then you have an answer.
Linear. Mhm.
So we go 1, 2, 3. So story 3, there was a scientist named Pavlov, and he had a dog. Pavlov would ring a bell and the dog would eat. So soon the dog knew ding dong means food, right? So one day Pavlov took a thermometer and a heat probe, and he touched the dog's nose at 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, a heat temperature, and nothing happened. So Pavlov turned the dial up to 40 degrees and touched the dog again, and nothing happened. But when Pavlov touched his dog at 45 degrees Fahrenheit, the dog jumped. So when Mount Helens exploded next to the 45th parallel, the grown-ups jumped. So I don't know how he tied that together, but it's kind of interesting. This is partly why I called my channel Connecting the Dots. It's
And
still,
that's what you're doing.
it's
Dot
inspired
connected.
after Willie has just inspired so much in me. So he says, you see, kids, everything that came to this land, America, from Europe came in 3s. 3 little pigs, 3 blind mice, Goldilocks and the 3 bears. And then there's 3 men in a tub, but there's also these 3-letter agencies: FBI, CIA, IRS, NBC, CBS, KKK, and the 3 fingers that control your brain. The 3 fingers that control your brain. Well, when you point at somebody, which people do when they're accusing you or saying something about you, there's actually 3 fingers pointing back at you. So often when you're criticizing for something, that's something that's triggering in you, and you have 3 fingers pointing back at you, you may actually be guilty of that kind of thing.
Yep.
So like a lot of times, like the cheating spouse accuses the other spouse of cheating out of some kind of weird guilt.
Yeah.
There's 3 fingers pointing back at them, but they're pointing a finger, and they do it. It's the weirdest thing. It happens over and over again.
I lived that life before.
And that person may not be
She-
cheating at all,
She
but it's the
constantly
guilty
accused
one.
me, and I did nothing but work and go home.
Yeah.
Even work with her. She was the one that was.
It's much better if you aren't pointing fingers at people,
Exactly.
because that falls into judgment. And that's what he's saying.
Exactly. And with the Pablo and the dog, he was trying to make a connection. Maybe it was the crescent moon, half moon, the moon and God. Dog, D-O-G.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Back to dog and God. Yeah. Yeah.
Covering in that
You're
one.
right on it, Bill. Back on that. So he's saying that this is a judgment finger. Okay.
Mhm.
But this is love.
Mm.
Yes, sir.
Except don't do this in Arabia, in like places like Iran, because in Iran, this is 10 times this.
Wow.
Well, you know,
Do not hitchhike in
You've
Iran.
been giving me the thumbs up a lot
in the
lately.
old
But in American culture, this is more of a love. Okay. Now this is definitely no love. Okay.
in ancient Roman culture, right? In the Colosseum where the gladiators would battle, I was told, uncovered somewhere online in my research, that this was actually, the thumbs up was actually indication of the crowd saying, yes,
Keep
take
him
his
alive.
head.
Oh dear.
Oh.
See, you got to know the context. But in the United States, this is a good thing. Thumbs up is a good thing.
So how did it translate to the United States as a good thing?
Interesting. And once I learned that, it's so
Lifting?
funny.
Because I thought it was like this meant like
Right?
take their head off. That's how it is in the movies. So you're telling me it
Oh,
was
yeah.
opposite of the movies.
That's what I would.
Another dang opposite thing that we gotta sort out.
Right.
How many opposites are we dealing with these days? Okay, so he's back to the kids. So look, listen, and ABCs are the first thing kids learn in kindergarten. So once upon a time, there was a Soviet Union boss named Khrushchev. I know, and they're totally in the news right now too, right? And the Soviet Union wanted the American people to become Soviets. So he said to to President Richard M. Nixon, "We will bury you," meaning us. Only Mr. Khrushchev didn't know that when you point your fingers, you have three fingers pointing back at you. So who won the Cold War? We did. Some people say this isn't World War III. That's starting, it's World War IV. That was World War III and we won. Anyhow, so you and your troubles come back in threes. How many people have said things happen in threes, right? So pointing like this is just downright impolite. Think of it that way. It's judgment, it's impolite. So then the next three Soviet bosses, the next three all got buried. Because what did they say? We'll bury you. Now what's happening to them? All three of them get buried. And Andropov buried on February 14th. Feb 14. Brezhnev buried on November 14th.
Wow.
Cherokee buried on March 14th. That 14 is very big with Willie, like
It's amazing.
because of the 28-day cycle. Cause, effect, cause, effect. So like, and then he says ABC, he's also pointing that out. Andropov is A, Brezhnev B, Chernenko C. ABCs. Back to the kiddos, the building. He is multi-layered on this stuff. So once upon a time, there were twins who controlled the poles of Earth. And when the people who lived on Earth became nasty to each other, we don't have any of that going on now, do we? Sarcastically, she said. And when the people who lived on Earth became nasty to each other and killing each other, the twins would release the poles from the Creator, and our Mother Earth would reverse and roll over, and a new magnetic pole would appear. In the 1985 Rose Bowl Parade on January 1st at Pasadena, California, did you notice the International House of Pancakes float with 14 children on board? It happened to break down right in front of the TV cameras, as the pilgrims would say, flatter than a pancake, right? International House of Pancakes, right? There were those 14 children were 7 sets of twins.
What?
And at the same time, the Hopi Eagle Dancer float won the President's Award. Now, what's the logo of the International House of Pancakes? IHOP. And then how do we spell Hopi?
Yep.
It's like IHOP backwards. HOPI,
Wow.
IHOP and Hopi. So it's kind of interesting. There's some kind of a parallel there. I don't know how the Hopis got lucky with the pancake house, but it says it's getting record cold in the east and record hot in the west, or reversing. So polarity, we were talking about polarities. So if we don't fix the polarities, the earth is going to start doing her own.
She's doing it now.
Yeah.
She's already.
Yeah.
in project.
So here's another once upon a time. Some people who called themselves pilgrims came across the Atlantic Ocean in a big boat. And when they saw the Cherokee people saw it, they were amazed, for the boat was bigger than any canoe. The boat was called the Mayflower. The boat had marks on the side, and the Cherokee chief asked the Pilgrim chief what the marks were. And the Pilgrim chief replied, "Those are the water level marks, and the top line is called the mark of the devil." Because if the boat were to sink and the ocean reaches the top line, they would all be between the devil and the deep blue sea. And then this is the anatomy of that kind of a ship. And so there's a water line in here somewhere. So if it gets to a certain part, you're between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's up to toss up whether you're going to live or not if it takes on that much water. I was trying to find some pictures of those floats in the parade too. I haven't found the right ones yet. Yeah, so you'd be between the devil and the deep blue sea. The pilgrims brought some gold from England, and the pilgrim chief said it came from number 11 Downing Street, London. And they also brought a book and an alphabet. The first letter was A, then B, and so on. That was long ago. Today, there is a magazine called Time, and every year they choose a man of the year. In 1983, they chose an unusual man, in parentheses. His name was Computer. The pilgrims liked to number everything, their homes, cars, highways. Yeah, it was a computer.
Wow.
Did you know the woman of the year this year was trans? Time magazine. Even their games, they have a scoreboard. We're keeping score and numbers. They even numbered their hosts. The Cherokee people, they numbered them on their rolls, their Indian rolls. They even numbered people. But they forgot to number the 1983 Man of the Year, the computer. They forgot to number him. So I will do it for them using Segoya's Cherokee alphabet. And that's the thing that's like gematria. He's going to break it down here. Okay, so on part of this, so 11, you do some kind of thing, you count over, and that ends up being an A. And because it's 11 Downing Street, right, in London, where the gold came from. So you count 11, and then down the last column, see, it's a 6. The second letter in the English is B, which is the 12th down. So he decodes the whole thing. So herein lies a key. If A is the sound go in English, then let's go to 6. 6 is down. Down is street, like Downing Street, or deep 6. So as the pilgrims would say, next to B, the last symbol is 12 down. So that he's doing this A, B, and he figures it all, like it's sort of like gematria. And then he because it's A, B, C, but he figures out the numbers based on moving it this way and that way. And then you go back and figure out C is 18 and O is 90 and M. So he puts in computer into what's kind of like their gematria, comes out 666.
But we found the 666 not to be necessarily the fearful thing,
666 is the number of man too.
which would tie perfectly in with how they said.
Now let's take the number of man. It's 666. Back to computer. What are we in danger of right now? Man becoming computer. I don't want to say too much more. But here it is, so relevant again today.
Yeah.
And we do
What
have
else
to
one
take
do,
back
Jen?
the 666. Many people think that's the devil, but in many other interpretations, 666 means the number of man. We need to take man back from the devil. We're going to have to reverse that. How many things have they reversed on us? Let's turn the table on them. Take it back for good.
There's a Devil's Lake in about every state. That I think it's the one I was talking about.
By Mount St. Helens.
It's Oregon.
Well, Washington and Oregon are close. Close vicinity.
I think.
And then Kathy loves this. She loves this barcode stuff. Like people out west will say, I'm gonna go hunting for me and catch me a bar.
Bar.
Right? A bar.
I tell her that a lot.
So there's a hunter. I'm gonna catch me a bar, right?
Yeah.
And then there's Chief Bar. So when a bear scratches, what's that look like? It looks like a barcode, right? A barcode, which is on all our goods and merchandise, right? So he says, there's the circle. coming back, right? Full circle. So they take something natural, like that you have in nature, like a bear scratching on a tree and leaving claw marks. And then they see that in our current world. Although it's not so natural, they still see these signs and symbols. If we could learn to see them and interpret them, I think we can find our way out.
Mhm.
But we have to learn to think differently. And I think that's what he's trying to communicate. If we want different results, we're going to have to think differently.
Mhm.
So these are like exercises in thinking differently. And I'm sure we're getting smarter just by going through them.
Yes.
So the clans came from bear. There's like bear clan, right? And all people return to the bear.
Mhm.
And then he's saying it's, but only be smart, get out of the way, don't get scratched.
Mm.
Okay. So bear, and he does their little code thing for it. He's got their letters that he decodes. Again, I haven't decoded every single thing on here, but my gal Kathy, she wants to decode this one a little bit. So there's a little bit more, but he's sort of telling the story with the bear, like the bear or the bar likes to control his food. He scratches along our groceries.
Mm.
And doesn't he want to control our food, right?
Yes.
Aren't
And
we were
prices.
can you believe we're talking about this? And it's what we were talking about earlier, but it's in Willie's stuff.
Mhm.
He likes to control our groceries because the pilgrims called the bear a bar, and the bear likes to sharpen his claws before he kills.
It's bar.
Bar, well, that's interchangeable here. Before he kills, which dull claws mean no food, so you got to keep them sharp.
Mm.
So how to track a bar? The bear goes into hibernation before winter sets in, and he gorges himself with food. So the Congress of the U.S. spent billions of dollars to the Wall Street stock market, which is called the bear market.
Mhm.
And the bear needed a place to hold up, so he could bring food into all his cubs from foreign countries like Russia and China. So the first bank to be taking away homes was Bear Stearns.
I've heard of that.
A bear will range around in a close circle after making a kill, like a killing on Wall Street, and he will cover up his kill like a deer or elk with brush
Mhm.
and sticks and leaves, so no other animals can kill. So the bear needs a satellite in space to transfer funds to all his cubs in foreign banks. What we got going on right now with money laundering and different people's bank accounts and family members and
efforts toward the world banking system.
we got, I cannot believe the relevancy of this. I mean, the last time I was here, it wasn't as irrelevant on this page as it is now.
Yeah, this was written in 92.
The bears collided in space. Do you remember that? In February 11th, 2009, they had satellites that collided in space. So it was CNN.com reported a Russian satellite crashed into the bank's satellite, and all the great vastness of space, the two bears crashed into each other.
Mhm.
So I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop it there, even though this is a whole nother thing to get into here, because I know I'm probably gonna time out. And turn this off. Screen sharing has stopped. So I just want to thank you guys. We've got Heather and Bill and Big King Sadiq, and of course me, Deanne. I hope you've enjoyed us decoding a little bit of Willie Whitefeather's work together. I can't say enough how much he's inspired me, how proud I am that I found this and kept it, and I'm able to share it with you, because we are those 7 to 14 generations he's talking about. And if we can make these little changes like the butterfly effect and think just a little bit differently, we can find solutions and work ourselves out of this, because we are going to create a bridge between what's going on now and what's going on in the future. We are going to find our way through this, but we do need to think differently. So I thank you very much. And I'm going to always end like I always tell you, let your love, light, and miracle shine.
We thank you.
Thank you.